But this is what was interesting. And this is what, to me, I'm like, okay.
Ken, what were you thinking?
And
Actually, let me rephrase that. Don't
Sure.
answer the way I asked.
Okay.
Let me rephrase.
2027 is not going to be 2023 and 2022. Could stuff come down? Sure. Is some stuff overpriced? Sure. Is it irrational? For the most part, I don't think so.
All right, welcome back to another Sports Car Dad episode. We've got a special episode today. We've got the man, the myth, the legend, Ken Goldin, the king of collectibles, who does not do long-form interviews very often at all. Outside of Netflix shows, he doesn't do long-form stuff. So, Ken, first off, how you doing, man? Thanks for coming on.
Doing good. I'm trying to survive a blizzard. One thing I will tell you is I've got back in 2021, I burst a blood sac on my vocal cord. I had vocal cord surgery, and since then, either whenever I talk too much or if I get bad allergies, even a little sick, my voice goes. So I'm gonna try and bear through it and get to everything you want to get to.
Sounds good. Sounds good. All right.
And
Well,
listen, don't be grossed out if you literally see me pour honey on a spoon and drink it. So it helps the throat.
All right. We won't freak out. We won't. Well, hey, I'm going to hit the hard stuff first. Let's address the elephant in the room. It's been kind of a wild week, up and down and up and down. Are we all poor? But seriously, what made you jump on a live stream after the largest trading card sale of all time? What made you think like, you know what? Let's go live after the sale.
Okay. First of all, I'll start off by saying, it was I think a 35-minute live. The comment that was clipped. I'm going to try not to curse in here, but I'm a moron for doing it. It was very stupid. I wish I didn't do it. As soon as it was done, I was like, oh crap. And it's not, it's not me, and it's not how I really feel. But I'll get to that in a bit. The live. I traditionally do a lot of lives. I am one of these guys. Look, there are a lot of people who joined the hobby in 2019, 2020, 2021, and since. I've been doing this 49 years, like literally 49 years. I friggin' love the hobby and not just, forget the financial. I mean, as a lot of breakers will tell you before the big streaming services came out and took over everything, I would hop on at 2 a.m. I'd hop on, breakers, whether it would be Leighton, whether it be Blaze, whether it would be Mamba Cards, it's on Instagram, and Ken Goldin is joined. I like to see the new product. I like to see what's coming out. I did a very famous Instagram live for about 2.5 hours in January 2021, after I had a big sale. Gary V was on there. I think Ravel was on there. The guys from Card Ladder were on there. Just a lot of people jumped in the live, and it was like, I remember I said a line, and I said, we're mainstream now. We are, out of our basement and into the mainstream because we had a really successful auction and the world was talking about it. I think it's my way of connecting to people, and I just enjoy it. I enjoy talking. I enjoy talking about collectibles. I enjoy answering questions in the chat. So that was part one, because it is something I traditionally do after a big sale. And in this particular case, honestly, Dustin, I was frustrated, and I also want to point out to start, just to give credit where credit is due and give warning where warning is due. I have a head of marketing and a head of social media. We have an outside PR firm. And, I've talked to some different people in the hobby with large social media accounts. Every one of them has told me two things. Don't respond to somebody on X, and move on. Don't talk about this ever again. Just completely ignore it, and absolutely don't do this interview. But look, it's me. I've never hid from anything. If I do something great, I honestly like to talk about it. And if this is one of these cases where I did over the past 8 days has had amazing successes, and I also screwed up pretty bad with some comments, and I want to take responsibility for that. So, but on top of that, the other reason for the live is I am passionate, I am emotional, I do care about the hobby. I think that during the entire Pokemon auction, during the entire Illustrator auction, I felt that my consigner was being bashed nonstop. I felt that I was being bashed. I felt Goldin's credibility was being bashed.
And you're
People
referring to
question.
Logan Paul
I'm
as the
referring to
consigner.
Logan Paul, the consigner.
Yep.
Yes. And honestly, I didn't answer any questions during that. I felt that this would be a good opportunity to, you know, give some facts, which I'm going to go through in a bit, but give some facts and also explain to people from my side why we do certain things, how we do it, how we check, and things like that. And also, again, it's one of these things, oh, ignore it, don't worry about conspiracy theories. This was one of those occasions I really wanted to address it. And I probably should care less about what people think. I probably should take the money, shut the F up, and move on to the next sale, right? That's what like everybody else would do. But you know something? Um, People don't really know the owner of any other auction house, major certainly, except me, right? I mean, it's not like Halpern or Ivy come on here and talk to people. It's not like all the other big houses. It's just so it's identified with me. I wanted to openly address it. Now, let me address the dumb comments. So it's a 35-minute, and this happened like probably in the last 3-4 minutes of the live. And people are chatting and people are asking questions, people commenting, and after 30 minutes of talking, I guess I just got annoyed. And the point I was trying to make was that the people that are typically complaining about this sale, that's not my customer that is bidding on the sale. And I should have left it at that. Um, you know, I made an incredibly stupid comment. Um, I regretted it as soon as I realized what I said. I'm like, oh. And then what's even dumb is, look, I did say, that the people complaining, don't buy on gold and can't afford to buy on gold. And then I just like, honestly, I just add a little thing, not even the weekly, which is so friggin' stupid because actually created the weeklies, and we even just added the TCG weekly. I created the weeklies so that Goldin can appeal not just to people who want to buy $50,000 cards. I literally
Right.
built the weeklies. You go to my sales meetings, I'm sitting there
That's actually
and
what I
I'm
was thinking when
pounding.
you said that. Yeah,
I
when you said
give
that.
I give
Yeah.
a $10,000 bonus a month to anybody who brings in the absolute most items between TCG and cards for the weekly, because I want like what I say in Netflix is true. I want to build it to $1 billion business. I want to have a legacy for me. I want to have a legacy for my family. I can't do that by just selling $1 million cards. And I've been there when the market sucks. And you literally have to sell a lot of 19, 29. Now, again, this inflation, maybe now we're talking 29, 39, 49, $59 items. But, I've been there when I sold items for $10 and $20 and, I had 500 of something. We got to sell for $19. One time I went to Tops. I went to Tops and I went to Upper Deck and I had them create special sets for me. Um, and like there were times on QVC, I would sell 100,000 of a top set for $19 in a day. Those were the good old days. That's when everything was affordable. So I am mad at myself. I can understand how if people were offended by that. If you want to say that's me, you could say that to me. But in reality, I am the driving force behind why we have weeklies. I am the driving force behind why we added a TCG weekly. I'm there to make sure we've got something at every price point while still delivering the same quality and same white glove service that we do. And trust me, I am really more pissed off at myself that, some bugs, poke. You know, they poking that I reacted to it. It was a dumbass comment. I am sorry for saying it. And you know, I have to own it, and I'm going to move on, and I am going to try to be more cognizant of the words coming out of my mouth in the future. And I'm also going to try to, you know, read the room better. The funny thing is that room was Instagram. Um, and it's funny because I had multiple consigners email me, oh my God, best live ever. It had like 2,200 likes before we took it down. It had 150 comments and maybe like three non-favorable when I took it down. But the point is that every social media app has its own type of collector. And Instagram, look, it's more love, it's more, hey, look at my collection, people showing off their cards, and there are people with inventories, and they want the values to go up. It's a different type of base in general than maybe you'll see on YouTube and certainly on X. And I think YouTube is probably more balanced than X and than Instagram. It's probably in the middle. So again, it was dumb. It is not what I do. Anybody who's ever been to the national convention and see me sit there for 10 hours, um, talking to kids, having people show me stuff on their phone, um, you know, the whole bit, I answer 300 DMs a day. People say, "Does you have some?" I do have a social media department. I don't let them touch my social media. So yeah, what's written on Instagram is me. What's written on X is me. I want people to, you know, I want to be able to communicate. And I think if people take the time to DM me, especially on Instagram, you know, which is where I get like hundreds and hundreds a day, my wife goes to sleep. I get like 5 hours of sleep a night. And between typically midnight and 3 in the morning, as these people will test, you've gotten replies. I answer DMs, and the DMs could be, some of them can be consignments, maybe a small part. Some of them are just saying, "Hey, I watched the show, big fan." Some of them are funny, like, "Hey, can you introduce me to X, or can you introduce me to Barry Bonds or Drake or something like that?" But a lot of them are questions. They're just people showing me cards. It's probably 10, 20 times a day. I get a picture of like a T206 Wagner or an 86 Fleer Jordan, and I have to tell them it's no good. And they go, "How do you know?" I said, "Look, I've been looking at these cards for 48 years. I don't need to see it in person. I know it's no good." A lot of people, I get kids saying, "What's the most important thing, you know, for me to do?" And I tell them, "Hey, number one thing for everything is bankroll management." I think people don't talk about it enough, but to me, it's the number one thing. Um, Educate yourself before you buy anything. Use comps. There's so many great tools. So I take the time and I reply every single day. Most of these people are never going to spend, buy on Goldin. Um, they're just collectors from all over the world, and they look up to me, and they know me from social media and from Netflix, and they're coming to me for help, and I give it 100% of the time. And it bothers me, and this is why I'm doing this, because it does bother me that, you know, if people took offense. By the way, for 99% of the people looking at this, I was not talking about you. I was specifically referring to the people criticizing the sale on the chat. And I took it too far, and life goes on. And hopefully anybody that I've disappointed, I will be able to make it up to you, and by my actions. And definitely come see me at the National or Fanatics Fest or any of the shows I go to, and I am always happy to chat it out with you.
Yeah, I think, well, great that you said that, Ken. You're a human being, and that's it. You're a human being. Like, people have emotions and stuff happens, but
Mhm.
I think you're in a tough spot because, I've known you since the show, pre King of Collectibles, and that's a great show. It's fun to
Mhm.
watch, but the way that
Mhm.
you're portrayed on that show
Mhm.
is like a god, of collectibles. Like the way they
Mhm.
roll you out, it's like
Mhm.
the private jet. we're going to visit Barry Bonds, and we're going to visit so you are portrayed a certain way. And I think that when, like that coupled with the live, it was like, this dude is like, what, but I know I've known you before the show, and you
Yep.
are, like, as you mentioned, there's not too many CEOs, presidents of companies, owners of companies that are getting back to people online. Like, it just doesn't happen like that. So anyway, yeah, I think that kind of speaks to what you're talking about.
Okay.
So good. All right. We've covered that. One thing I wanted to ask you just specifically about the bidding. There was questions about, there was bidders that were in the room, at kind of the final bidding. And I was curious how that got set up, how you decided to set up the room where you've got the guy that ended up winning the Pikachu card. He was there.
Yep.
And then there was also bidders globally that were also making offers. Was it the guys that were in the room kind of battling it out at the end, or was it bids coming from all over the place, or how did that go?
Sure. So
set up.
Let me share some statistics that I shared on the now archived recording. And this is, and again, it's frustrating to me because I look at this and I think, wow, this is an amazing sale. And first of all, it's an amazing accomplishment. When I asked my my head of TCG, I said, I'm gonna, advance Logan Paul, might be 3-4 million. I'm glad I got it down. But he said, you might not make your money back. I mean, I don't know that card's going to sell for what he paid for it. So, to me, I look at it as like a great accomplishment, a great marketing accomplishment, and really, it broke the ceiling. And as far as the bidding goes, we started at $500,000. We had 98 bids. We had 19 different bidders, and we had 3 individuals or corporations. And I will say some, they're obviously from the people. There are some people that were part of a corporation. There are some people that were, doing a fund. There were some individual collectors. But there were three different bidders that placed bids that evening and deep into extended of $15 million or more. Now, the live stream was set up for the purpose of to do a live stream on the close of the auction, as well as open up the first edition box. And it was going to be limited to the people who won packs. So that was going to be a live stream. But on like January, I got on my thing on like January 18th, I was contacted by AJ Scaramucci. Now, what people won't know is that, everybody knows, most people probably know his dad is Anthony Scaramucci, famously was Trump's head of communications, but really is the head of Skybridge Hedge Funds and runs an alternative asset conference called SALT every year for at least 15 years, maybe 20 years. Well, in 2016, I was auctioning off, one of the more famous items we've sold at Goldin, and it was a Mike Piazza jersey that was worn the first day that any pro sport played in the state of New York after 9/11. I think it was, I should know this date by heart. I think it was like either 20th or 21st of 2001, September 2001. So it was the first game played on the soil, and the Mets were losing, and Piazza hit a game-winning home run, and it was the first time everyone in New York got to cheer. They felt emotional. They hugged each other. Baseball was back. The Mets won, and they all had, of course, the flag on their sleeves. So it was a very emotional jersey. I got it from a Mets fan. Some people were, upset it was being auctioned, and said, "Hey, they should go in a museum. They should go in a museum." So I went on. I think it was. At the time, it was CNBC. So I was on CNBC, and I said, look, this is a very important jersey. We believe it's very important, the integrity of the auction, that if we put something up for bid, that it's very important to us that somebody can bid on it and win. I said, however, this is an emotional item. So what I will do is if somebody wants to purchase it privately out of auction, have me stop the auction, there are 2 things that have to happen for me to consider it. Number one, before I even consider it, you have to agree to sign a contract with me. And at the time, Goldin Auctions, and I owned the company. It was 100% me at that point in time. And I said, you have to sign a contract and to say that you guarantee to put this on public display on the city slash state of New York. Um, and, I mentioned that the 9/11 Museum would be acceptable and the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown would be acceptable. So Anthony Scaramucci contacts me, and he's a minority owner of the Mets. And he said, I'm a minority owner of Mets. A couple other minority owners want to buy this. And we will agree to put it on public display. However, we want it rotating between 9/11 Museum, Cooperstown, which are your two choices. And we also want it in the Mets Museum.
Hmm.
And the part two was my consignor had to agree. So they made an offer. I went to my consignor. I said, look, I can't force you to do this. I can't. I couldn't force him to do it. I said, but you live in New York. I live in New Jersey. Let's make sure this happens. And he listened to my speech and said, fine, go ahead, do it. So we pulled it. So his dad, put me at his conference that year, was very grateful. We went on. Maria Bartiromo, who was on Fox Business, then switched, and we went on there like 8 in the morning. He proudly showed off the jersey. He introduced me at a SALT conference that summer. I met his son, although I don't remember meeting his son. His son was probably, was exactly probably like 22 back then. So I had a history with the family. So when he contacts me and says, I'm really into Pokemon, I'd like to talk about this card. And I'd also, like to hear your views on it, because I hear, a lot of noise. So I went in my car and I drove to New York and I met the guy. And we sat down for an hour talking about the industry, talking about the card, going over some of the what people considered hair on the item. And he felt comfortable and said, I really want to own this. He goes, am I allowed to go to the live stream? And I said, look, if you're telling me you're going to bid on the card, of course you can go to the live stream. And then he goes, I am worried that, Logan Paul is going to do his live stream. And what if something crashes? What if I can't, what if the system's slow? What if I can't get my bid in? I'd like to go there in your office, put me in a conference room, and I will, work there. So I signed him for everybody who watches Netflix. My entire team was there. So Ryan Krupa was his guy, Ryan from King Collectibles. So Ryan was his guy, and Ryan was in there with him and making sure, that he understood all the rules and, got any bids that he needed to get in. What I didn't know is, because it was 150 people there, what I didn't know is that at some point he left the conference room and he went back into the main room, because I saw him. I said hello in the conference. Once the lights were on us, it was dark in the audience. I had no idea who was in the friggin' audience. So then the second bidder, I did not know was in the room. They are from China, and they turned out to be in the room, and I'll tell you that story. The third bidder was this. Now, this is not third bidder. This is the third bidder at 15 million and over. So once
Oh,
it got
wow.
probably like 10 million, everybody dropped that except those three. So he was not somebody and so what I did also, again, I'm trying to be a smart businessman. I'm trying to do my best for my consignor. So I'm saying, hey, this is a big event. These people, if someone's going to spend, at the time was only 6.3 million. But if someone's going to spend $6 million, $7 million, $10 million, would you like to attend this event? I know you didn't buy a pack, but would you like? So we invited anybody who would bid like over, 5 million and or had credit limit up to that. We said, hey, if you'd like to come to New Jersey, if you'd like to meet Logan Paul, we had a dinner beforehand, the whole bit. We gave out, collectibles. We had special collectibles made up for the night. I said, would you like to come? This guy said, no, I'm out of the country. That individual was, bidding remotely out of the country, but he was texting with Dave Ammerman. So Dave's sitting there by the gong, and this guy, if I see, I didn't know that until afterwards. Dave told me, so look, text this guy. I asked him, are you out? And when he placed his bid a little bit above 15 million, he was outbid. He just texted Dave, I'm out. And then the other two guys went back like one or two more times, and that was the end of it. So he wasn't there. The third guy, I did not know. I'd never met these individuals. It is a group of businesses in the Pokemon community in China. It's a group, and I had approved the group based on their financials, because that's the one thing about Gold. You're bidding on this, you're almost getting a body cavity check to make sure that you're going to be able to pay for it, and because we
Right.
don't want people running up a bid that, we don't have their passport, we don't have their identification, we don't have invoices from other auction houses that they paid, we don't have bank accounts, the whole bit. And some people get offended by that, but look, I want to make sure a sale goes through, and I don't want anybody to, for nefarious reasons, to try and bid with no intent to pay. So I dealt with one of the other individuals involved, and I knew that individual's name. That was not the name of the person bidding. Okay, that was not that. Excuse me. That was not the name of the person who was in the room. The
Oh,
person
okay.
I
Yeah.
dealt with was the account, but the guy, I guess, who was bidding was one of his partners. So he stood up and said, and this guy bought 12. I knew there were big deals in the community, because you don't drop $400,000 buying 12 packs and flood. And they flew 12 people in. They had
Wow.
their TV crew. They had news media from Hong Kong. I did interviews with Hong Kong, for them. I did content for them. So they probably spent over $1 million just to be at this event and to buy the packs, and because they thought it was a great experience, and they obviously thought, with right now it's at 3 million views, with that many views, it was good advertising for them.
Quick
So I did
question on
not
that.
know, and he came out and said I was in the underbidder, but that's how these people are there. But that's
Yeah.
why they were there. This isn't some evil plot or some whatever. It's smart business by Goldin.
Yeah, no, I get it. Did you get the feeling like, because it seems like Scaramucci, he's got kind of a company or something that he's working on kind of with that card. Logan Paul announced Rip It. Did you get the feeling like that company also, like the Chinese company, being
Mhm.
that it was also maybe a marketing event for them if they had won and they could have done something as well with it in the same way? Because that, with Dick's Sporting Goods and all, it seems like
Mhm.
a lot of folks are doing this for the marketing of it. The as you mentioned, the millions of views that the stuff
Mhm.
is getting.
Yeah, I mean, I think that so I can tell you, I don't think it's a surprise, because he's put it out on social media. The guy who won the Cheetos is a huge lives and dies Pokemon. The one, he came to our office, had the mask so people wouldn't know who he is, flew in from Asia. He was bidding. If he won, he's an individual. He would have kept it. He would have, probably looked at it every day and so on. And there are a lot of other bidders like that. The two top bidders, I think that marketing, corporate launch, and really getting a name for themselves certainly had a part of it. Put it that way. And yeah, Logan obviously used the night to announce a new. I don't know exactly what Rip It is yet. I imagine it's got something to do with breaking. I don't know if it's real breaking. I don't know if it's digital breaking, but he obviously said, "Hey, I'm gonna have all these viewers. I'm gonna use that." And these people obviously saw, hey, you know, I can go out and I can spend $3 million advertising, or I can get, I can buy I can buy the Holy Grail Pokemon. I can get a lot of publicity for it and still own an asset. So my PR company told me, and this is as of like after day 3, it was $220 million of AUM, or whatever they call that, for media, like the media value of the event and of the
Yeah.
card. So they, they got their money's, if they got their money's worth out of the media attention only, and it certainly got a lot of attention to launch. And you know something? The hobby has a history of doing that. And again, this is where I'm going to come back as being older than everybody's watching this video, and been in this business longer than everybody's watching this video. I was at Guernsey's in New York in 1998 when the 70th home run ball and the other home run balls of Mark McGwire were sold. And I was there in the room, and I was there. There were collectors that were buying it, but nobody was going to be able to outbid the winner, because the winner was probably at the time a centimillionaire, named Todd McFarlane, who
Yeah.
created Spawn and who,
Yeah.
reimagined Spider-Man.
He
And
was
he
trying
had
to get in the
launched,
starting lineups.
yeah, he had
Yeah.
launched McFarlane Toys.
Yep.
So he used it, and then he went on publicity tour with it. He used it to brand his new MLB and MLBPA license. And obviously, I guess he didn't know. He didn't know what would happen with McGuire steroids. He didn't know his record would be broken a couple days, a couple years later by Barry Bonds. And he realizes that ball is probably worth 10% of what he paid for it. But it did its job for him. So this is not the first time. Dick's was not the second time. There is a ton of people that buy stuff in all different facets of the world to get the marketing attention. And yes, as an individual collector, if you are going up against a corporation, whether it's Topps or at the time Panini or Upper Deck, that needs a game used jersey for a product desperately, it could be unfair and you're not going to beat them. Same thing with this. If you're going after a grail item, unless you are Ken Griffin and you're a multi-billionaire and you don't care that there is a consortium of people trying to buy the Constitution, you're going to go out, or Declaration, and pay $45 million for it. You need that type of money sometimes. And I definitely can get how it's frustrating to the individual collector when a lot of the grail items do that. And look, the other card for purchase by Wondershine for 12.9 million. All of a sudden, Kevin O'Leary has a press release ready to go as soon as the auction ends, and is all over the news, as he should be if he's trying to promote his brand. But yeah, so that's I do feel that. I actually want to hit on a few other things. I'm gonna tick off everything about we're gonna tick off everything about this auction that anybody's ever wanted to know, just so we could do it. So I want to talk about the grade of the card. So
Yeah.
there are a large percentage of people that have been on the internet complaining, oh my God, Logan Paul got preferential treatment, or Logan Paul resubmitted this thing 10, 15 years ago. You know what's funny? Logan Paul bought this as a 10, and the person before him bought this as a 10. And I can say this because he is not only a client, but he sent me this text and he posted it on his Facebook. So it's clean for me to say. A gentleman by the name of Justin Cornett had this card, and I believe he sold it in 2015. It was a 10 when he got it. So this has been a 10 for many, many, many years. And I get it. People complain all the time that the grading is unfair. People complain all the time that, you can look at a 9, it could be a 9 one day, somebody else looks at it, it could be a 10. There's a lot of nuances. I don't want to get into that. I'm certainly not going to get into it here. I would say that I've made some big videos where I pulled a card and I thought it was 8 or a 9 or a 10, and it comes back as 6 or a 7, like those Derek Jeter SPs from 6 years ago whenever I opened up on Instagram Live. My break with Drake, they were perfect. No 10s, no 9s, some 8.5s, no 9s. So at least on the Jordans. Other cards, yes, but on the Jordan, no. So I understand people don't like that, but I just don't. If PSA has it in their database as a 10, and you scan it and it comes up, you type it and it comes up a 10, you can't say it's not a PSA 10. You can say you don't think it deserved to be a 10 if that's your opinion, but it actually is a 10. PSA calls it a 10, and I'll address the reholder. So I'm looking at this thing, and I'm looking at my scans, and I'm looking, these scans look like shit. I'm looking at this all over the cars. It looks like damage, this and that. I'm like, it's the friggin' holder, because Logan Paul takes this diamond necklace with diamonds all around it, and he walks around, he jumps. Every time it moves, sorry, I'm just going to pull out first card next to me. Okay. A boring nothing T206. Who is this? Admiral Schley. Okay. Polar bear back. The best, what is this? The best scrap tobacco. And if you look, when I was around in 1910 smoking, Polar Bear was the best scrap tobacco. Just It was amazing. It was amazing. But so imagine diamonds going boom, 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 boom. It's scratching the card. It's this because diamond's the hardest substance. So I looked at this and I said, boy, so I said, I want to fix this. So I talked to some of my bidders. Um, I talked to some people I expected to bid, like Scaramucci. I said, yeah, I'm going to go, get this thing reholdered. Um, I talked to Logan, and he goes, you want to do that? I said, Logan, it looks like crap. People think, the card looks like a 4 because the holder is so beat. He goes, fine. Took it to PSA. They reholder it. Just like the Will Chamberlain, which was, they had a 10. The guy wanted the reholder. They looked at it and said, oh, crap, this is a 9. They put it in a 9. If PSA felt it wasn't a 10, they would have basically said, keep in the holder, sorry. But so I reholdered it. No, there's no way that I went out and reholdered. We don't do that. We don't, when we have a consignor's item, we don't do anything to the item without the consignor's approval. And as far as the video, Logan Paul is the drama guy. He knows what's going to get the most clicks. That's what he did, and that's what he did. But yeah, everybody, he knew I wasn't doing anything with the card. The item had, I haven't looked now, had over 6 million views. Guinness contacted us 2 weeks before once Logan announced the live stream and said, hey, we presented Logan with a certificate for the first time. This has already broken the record. Do you mind if we're present so we can do it on his live stream? Now, Guinness did it because they're saying, hey, this is Logan Paul. He's going to get 5, 10, maybe 20 million people watching this stream. We've been around for 150 years, whatever. We're kind of old-fashioned Guinness. Let's get on a live stream, right? So they wanted to be there, so we let them there. And yeah, I mean that's the card.
It sounds to me, just with you telling the story and everything, that the age of the influencer, I guess the mega influencer, I would call Logan Paul more of kind of a mega influencer, where he's just got, I mean, because what you're telling the story, there's so many strings that were pulled, because of this guy. I mean, if this is like an average consigner, I mean, I'm sure you probably amazing things, but on the marketing side, he's a huge marketer himself. So you guys are tag teaming basically on this thing. Wild stuff. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover about this particular card? I mean, we know it has a little bit of a checkered past, that people have talked about. You took it on, you felt comfortable with it.
Sure. And I'll explain this. I'll touch briefly on, I'm aware that this card, it wasn't until even after I got the consignment that the first person contacted me, even before I got the consign, once it was like in a Netflix preview, about liquid. Now I looked at this thing and what did I do? Before we went to auction, I've got there's a general counsel at Goldin who is an eBay attorney. Took the stuff, took everything, boom. Here's all the information. I want you to look into everything. And he looked into everything. Spoke to Logan's lawyers. He looked at the, whatever happened in the Canadian Stock Exchange. He looked at this, he looked at that. And he said, we are good to sell it. There is absolutely zero, there's not an issue here. You're fine. And, I know that going in, people said, because I guess originally in the marketing, people said that Logan sold 51% or thought he did. And in actuality, it only sold, I think, 5.4, 5.6% is all that was quote unquote tokenized. Our attorneys looked at the rules. He saw how you can exchange ownership because Ken, you are good. I've looked at this. Everybody's looked at this. We are good to sell it. Now, I actually addressed this with Logan and I said, look, what can you do here? What can you do? This is before we started. And he got his attorney and they sent me a list. And the list showed who owned tokens and how many tokens they owned and this and that. And then it showed me his wire for $270,000 to pay and showed me how that was actually over the amount that either it was trading at the time and that he sold it for to cover everybody and cover expenses. And then he spent 3 weeks and his own money. He told him, I will pay for it, whatever, because I guess Liquid had been shut down, bankrupt, whatever the case may be. I don't know their situation. And he had them open up the site and people who had shares, about a little less than half or some percentage had we gotten paid previously. He goes, go in and get your money. But this is what was interesting. And this is what, to me, I'm like, okay, everybody who was complaining about Liquid, they were actually not shareholders. They were not token holders, because we had one individual, one, all the publicity we got. We had one individual who had purchased a token, who emailed us or contacted us in any way and said, hey, this is my thing, blah, blah, blah. What do we do? And we said, hey, this thing's going to be open. The lawyer wrote him. And if you can't get your money out, contact us and we're going to pass you on to Logan. Now, I understand, and I understand now more than ever, that there are a lot of people that do not like Logan. I stick to sports cards. I stick to memorabilia. We sell everything, but I'm like really a sports guy. I've never owned an NFT. I've never owned a single piece of crypto. Whatever. I just don't. So, people talking about these past businesses and things like that. I understand that that there are people that hate him. And I understand that there are businesses that he's been involved in that people have lost money. I get that now. And I also get, hey, I need to understand that when I'm talking to people. I need to understand that when, I'm dealing with it. And, to me, if I own this card, if I sold this, if I paid 5.25 million and I sold it for, 16.5 million dollars, minus fees, let's say I still almost triple my money. $250,000 was paid in. I tripled my money. Contact me, not Ken Goldin, contact the owner. I'm gonna triple your money. You get your payout from them. I'm gonna double it. Thank you so much. This has been I want this to be a great experience for all of us. I think that would be amazing goodwill. I think that would go so far. I can't spend somebody else's money and do it, but yes, I definitely understand. And I realize that doing this deal with Logan, who I want to emphasize, I have known him since 2020. I've been with him in person, maybe 10 times, maybe 12. He has met everyone in my family. He's met my kids. He's been on my Netflix show twice. We've done 3 breaks together. He has never been anything but kind to me, kind to my family, generous with his time, generous with my daughter, with my kids. My 8-year-old daughter is a WWE fan. He said, go to Madison Square Garden, bring Carly. I want to see Carly behind, and then we walk through, he introduced us to the other wrestlers. Same thing in Philly when they were in Philly Raw a couple weeks ago. A generally warm person is all I've ever experienced. And, he puts on an act in the WWE. And again, it has always been a straight shooter with me. And every time I've done a transaction with him where he said he was going to do something, he's done it. And I try not to judge people by anything else but my own personal experience. So I'm not going to say anything bad about Logan, except the fact I understand there are people that have had bad experience in certain businesses, and I respect that. I understand that, and as Darren Ravel said to me, you sold his card for 16.5 million. Even if you didn't go live, you were going to take a ton of shit.
Yeah,
so,
fair enough. He's polarizing, no doubt, no doubt. All right, well, we're almost 45 minutes in, Ken.
Let's keep going.
Let's keep it rolling.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I didn't realize I was talking so long. Wow.
No, hey, good stuff.
Okay.
The Honus Wagner, I know that was something that we wanted to touch on. I don't want to hit on kind of the same things that you might have seen in the show, because I don't want to repeat it, but any kind of interesting things or behind the scenes stuff with that Wagner, or anything that you just want to kind of talk about in general, because that was such a huge find. You just don't see them. You found one, just throw something out there that was interesting about that experience.
Sure. Look, in my life, it's always an amazing privilege and pleasure to be able to make a major discovery. When I was a teenager, I had a discovery of 1951 Topps unopened product, which was like incredible.
Wow.
But to think that I found a Wagner and discovered it and lucky enough to get it during the show is just incredible. I spoke to the family all throughout. I spoke to the family last night. They were absolutely thrilled with the price, thrilled with the marketing, and I think it's the Mona Lisa, and it's really an honor and awe-inspiring to me when I'm able to handle something like that.
Yeah, such an incredible card. All right, let's transition. Let's transition to nostalgia, 80s,
Mhm,
90s card boom. I'm sorry, but like I think about like, Don West. You
mhm,
obviously were working back in those days.
mhm.
Talk about Don West in particular.
You have got to be kidding me! Kidding me! Wild West Deals!
Don West here from WildWestDeals.com. Does this look familiar?
This guy was a selling machine.
Mhm,
And also you were back there back then too, just doing like, Fleer,
mhm.
Fleer baseball and all those
Yep,
sets. And it's funny because people look back on it now and it's like, oh man, that stuff is not worth very much nowadays.
yep.
But it's like it was the action and the atmosphere of that time period, even though it wasn't necessarily the best buy. Nobody knew that. And of course, everyone was just having a good time. What are your memories with Don West? And I guess how in depth did you work with him? Did you hang out with him a lot, or was it just kind
Mhm.
of like here and there?
Well, I never went on camera on Shop at Home, so I had an exclusive deal with QVC. So, and QVC was very different selling. It was like laid back. This is a lovely card. This is pretty. This would make a great gift. And that was QVC. And I went on QVC, and that's what I did. And I put athletes on QVC. I had Joe DiMaggio on QVC. I had Shaquille O'Neal on QVC. I had Ken Griffey Jr.,
Hmm.
Nolan Ryan, Mickey Mantle. I mean, like everybody, all the legends I worked with throughout the 1990s. But they made an exception for me to say, okay, fine, you can call in by the phone. So I would be on the phone, and typically, Don would be talking, and and I met Don several times. Don was he worked for wrestling after. He was an
Yeah,
entertainer.
yeah.
He was a showman. He wanted to give, he knew, I think it was WOR in New York. He knew he was on WOR late at night. So he wanted to like make sure people in the bars turned him on for entertainment. And he knew he was over the top. He knew he was over the top. He loved being over the top. He was so happy when he was parodied not once but twice on Saturday Night Live, in that skit. I believe
Oh
Robert
yeah,
Downey Jr. was in it. I
yeah.
mean, it was just it was
That's
he
when you
was
made
he
it.
was a riot. He
Yeah.
was a lot of fun. I will say that he did not there was no line that he didn't cross. Okay, so he would not, sometimes he would go too far, and he'd promise it, and he was just it definitely was what was aggressive, but he really did like the stuff. He really did enjoy the stuff, and it's entertaining. And the funny thing is, I've been telling people with all the streaming services, I gotta say this, eBay Live, and you got whatnot and everything else, is that like he was like literally like it's kind of like live streaming
Oh
30
man,
years before 35 years before live streaming, right?
he would have crushed it on Fanatics Live or whatnot or whatever.
Yep.
He would have crushed it in today's in today's game.
Yep.
Yeah, the guy was a machine.
Hmm.
I've got a question for you, just kind of
Sure.
like it's like a three-pronged question because
Sure.
you've lived all of it.
Yep.
We always talk about comparisons between like 2020, 21
Hmm.
boom versus
Hmm.
25, 26 boom.
Hmm.
And then let's throw in kind of that 80s, 90s, those boom days, and
Yep.
I guess the bubble, because there was somewhat of a bubble that grew in the 80s, 90s, of course, and then in 2021.
Yep.
Is 2025, 26, is it a different animal, or is it kind of, does it verge on some similar stuff from your
Oh,
point of view?
okay. Well, here's the good news for everybody. The good news for everybody is 2025, 26 is not 2020, 21. Okay. 2021 was the craziest time I've ever lived through in my life. Stuff that I thought was worthless was selling for 10 times what it should have sold for. Um, it was completely irrational buying. It was a ton of liquidity. It was FOMO buying. It was mom and pop and grocery baggers and Uber drivers and everywhere in between, plumbers to, investors, everywhere in between, buying just because they wanted to buy and they did not know what to buy and they did not know what to pay. So that's why we have comps back then, stuff like Giannis base PSA 10s,
yeah.
that you'll never come to 20% of that. That's like when we sold and you had Gary V, who I love and I respect, but he was talking about the cards and he was talking about the Jordan rookie. Could it be the next $1 million card? And people, bid up to $720,000 at my auction in January 2021. So, and now look, that's a card that actually may one day, not in 26, not in 27, but may one day a basic PSA 10 might be in that, $600,000-$700,000 range if enough new people come in. But some of this other stuff, 87 tops wax boxes for $160. I mean, come on. Everything was crazy. Everything was irrational. Everything was absolutely off the wall. The difference now is you can look at an item. I can look at an item and we can say, I can't believe it went for that price. This is friggin' nuts. And the people watching can say, I can't believe it went for that price, but it's friggin' nuts. However, we certainly can look at that item and say, yeah, that's a good item. That's unique. That's cool. I can understand how collectors really want it. And in some category, that's the best of the best. It may sell for double or triple what I personally think it's worth. It may sell for more than other people think it's worth. But what I will not deny is that it is a great item. And if somebody wants to own something that they consider best of the best, they are paying up. So I think the things that are going out right now that are so crazy prices is truly the best of the best. And it is the GOAT of the GOATs. It's the it's the Jordan, it's the Kobe, it's the exquisite one of ones, it's the illustrated PSA 10s, it's things like that. And it's kind of funny because even a Wagner, because it doesn't have that mania associated with it, even a Wagner doesn't hit that. Although, I'll tell you what, if I had a PSA 4 Wagner, I'd be getting $40-50 million for it tomorrow. If I had a PSA 10 Mantle, there you go. So
isn't it weird that $5 million for the Wagner almost feels cheap, these days?
Isn't that amazing? And it's a one. It's a one. It broke the record at the height of COVID by $2 million. It broke the record. But yeah, and again, I wish Will Stern didn't put that out. Said, I thought it can go for 10. He put it out the day before. I think even in Netflix, I told him one would go for between 3 and 4 million. I think right in the show. So they were like overjoyed. They're like over the moon, ecstatic. But yeah, I think, look, I think the market is hot right now. I think that the market certainly can cool down. I think that there's some percentage more in the TCG and more in the ultra modern basketball that is hyper on, partly tied to crypto. I can tell you one thing. Nobody owns Mickey Mantle cards, owns Bitcoin. I mean, it's not people buy. It's not like they don't own the Trump meme coin, right? But some other people in other areas do. And obviously, if the economy goes down, we can see a slowing. But we are not in a position. We are not in 1989, or excuse me, 1990. We're not in 1990. Or certainly not in 1994 when everything crashed because of the strikes. We're not post 9/11 when buying basically stopped because the world stopped for good reason. We're not in 2008 and 2009 when Brandon Steiner said to me, "Business sucks. The only thing I can sell is dirt." Because he was selling dirt from Yankee Stadium for $19. And we're not going to come. 2027 is not going to be 2023 and 2022. Could stuff come down? Sure. Is some stuff overpriced? Sure. Is it irrational? For the most part, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, there you have it. Now, a lot of people that might not know you or new to you, maybe just from King of Collectibles, that don't know your past history in the hobby, might not realize that you manufactured cards at one point. You worked with your dad. You guys came up with certain draft pick cards, autograph
Yep.
card inserts, certain types of repacks. Tell us about kind of some of those, I guess, early days with your dad.
Man, so look, my dad was my hero. My dad died unexpectedly of a heart attack at 62. I got a phone call from my mom. I went there, tried to resuscitate him. I was 28. Um, I actually started cards myself, and he drove me around. Um, Grew up in a typical middle class family. I wasn't considered rich. Um, and my first deal was I traded in my electric car set for cards to a friend. And then my dad loaned me $70 to make my first purchase. And he was driving me around for a couple of years. And I went to school in Philly and I was going to get a Philly license, which you were allowed to do at 16 back then. So I'm 15. And he goes, listen, I've been driving you around for 3 years. You're going to start driving yourself. And I would like to split this with you. So from now on, when we go out, we go do a deal. I'd like to get involved. I've had the time of my life with you. And he wanted to do it together. So we did.
That's awesome, man. This is kind of a little personal, but I always try to wonder when I see somebody like yourself, highly motivated, it's like, where's that fire come from? Where's the chip? There's a chip on your shoulder. And it's funny because some people, it always befuddles me when people are like, oh, silver spoon and, rich people are rich and they pass money down. You know what happens though? A lot of times when you have highly motivated people, it's usually not that way. It's usually that they didn't have it and then they work their ass off for it. Is that part of, I guess, just kind of your parents and the support and everything? And then unfortunately losing him at a young age, is that part of the chip, and the fire?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's not, I think it's part of it. I mean, look, I paid for my own car. I learned the value of money. I learned hard work at literally 12 years old, at 13 years old. When I was 14, 15, 16, I wasn't going to parties. Honestly, I gave up a lot of weekends. I was sitting at my house running a business. What did I do with that? At 16, I bought my first car. I bought a Trans Am.
That's cool.
I got a partial athletic, partial academic scholarship to GW. I played tennis. I was my big joke was I went to playing tennis 4 hours a day in from the time I was like 15 to 21 to playing 4 hours during the rest of my 20s when I started working. But it was I think this is part of the reason why I had, maybe have had a chip and really so motivated. First of all, I just think I'm a motivated individual. I can't explain it. Look, I do have an ego. I want to be the best. Not only do I want to be the best, I do want people to know I'm the best. And it's not, maybe it's a fault, whatever. It is what it is. But I want people to, say, if I have a big item, there is nobody that's going to do a better job than Ken Goldin. Absolutely nobody. And I think that's what we do, and that's why we get these great results. But I'm really competitive. I don't understand why. It's a drive. It's kind of like Jordan and Kobe, but for this business. And I started the business in 2012. I started it, and we did 800,000 the first year. And we were going into my second auction, and I went to he's gonna love the credit on this one. I went to a heritage event in New York where they were displaying their platinum auction, and I think it was 2013. I think they had the Ali listing gloves back then, and I was in there, and Derek Grady was the VP of Heritage at the time for sports, still works there. Derek and I get along great, but he'll remember this. He says, you're in the auction game now. you know, some people will know you, and you've got your buddies that are athletes. So I'm sure you're going to get some athlete collections. And I've gotten, and that look, I'll get into athletes in a minute. And look, you may have to make this 2 episodes. Who the hell knows? You may have to edit it and cut. We'll figure it out.
Oh, we're
But
gonna run this thing. This is gonna be
but
like
look,
this is a Joe Rogan episode.
and that's what people need to know. I will run at the mouth. I really love talking about this stuff. I love it. I look around here and I look at everything, and it makes me happy. Look at it, and that's what I think a true collector is as well. You look at the stuff, it makes you happy. Um, but so he goes, you know, so you started Goldin. Congratulations, Goldin Auctions. But you may know some people and you may get some stuff, but it's just you, Ken. It's just you.
You took that personally.
Yeah. Look at Heritage. And he starts pointing out the different names. He goes, you're Ken Goldin. We're the 27 Yankees. Look at this lineup. And that motivated the hell out of me, like literally for 10 years until 2020 when I passed Heritage in sales. And I had to remind Derek, he said that to me. But that was like somebody going to me and saying, you're a little speck and we're this Goliath Heritage. And now I do more business in the category than they do.
Well, there it is. Yeah, the chip. I love it. All right. Okay, we've talked about nostalgia. We're through the 80s, 90s boom. Yeah. All right, so we'll finish out the last topic. I know you're a big baseball guy. Obviously, you know a ton of athletes, but you're big with your family too. I mean, you see that on the show, King of Collectibles, with your daughter, and then, of course, your youngest. I believe Paul's your youngest, correct?
Carly is 8. She was new.
Oh, okay.
He was on season 3. Carly is the one. If I sit there, I'm opening up Star Wars and Labubus. That's Carly.
All right, so you've got it's a family affair, which is awesome. Yes. I mean, you can't beat that. But let's talk about your love for baseball. You've got a project that you're working on, and your son's involved. Tell more about that. I want to learn more about it.
Sure. So about 3 years ago, I was my son loves baseball. I've always loved baseball. I had to choose between tennis and baseball, and I was just too good at tennis. And they played at the same time. So I gave up baseball when Little League was over and I was 12. That was the last time I played baseball. But he loves baseball and he's good. So I wanted to open up a facility for him. And I opened it up with a friend and the dad of one of his friends, and called Crescent Sports. It's a 501c3 nonprofit. And we really operate it as a, forget nonprofit. I operate it as nothing more than a give back to not just my community, but to the baseball community around the world. And when I say that is, so we have training, we have sports teams, the local teams, people are on the team, irrespective of their, look, and I'm here where I am. It's not a quote unquote, low income area, but not all the areas are rich. Not all the areas are, people of different incomes live everywhere. So if people want to play, we let people play irrespective of their ability to pay. So if we have to scholarship kids, we scholarship kids. We provide free training. And we also have national teams. My son got very good. He's, been on Perfect Game All States. His Little League team went to the state championship in New Jersey 3 years in a row. Won states, went to regionals, Little League World Series when he was 11. So, it's good. So I was looking for a really good national team, and I found a group of people that, had a team, and the coach goes to me and goes, listen, we love playing, with your son. We love this, but, we can't travel. None of these families have money. None of these families can, pay to go to California, pay to go to Houston, pay to do this and compete. We really want to compete in the national stage. We're looking for a sponsor. And, that team, it was originally called Jersey Devils. I changed the name to Golden Prospects. And that team is like literally probably one of the best 2 or 3 teams in the world. in the country, currently ranked 7th, going to Houston. And then, you know, another group of 12-year-olds approached me. And it's like, hey, Paul's not going to play on this team, but we'd really like to participate in this too. And then a group of 13-year-olds approached me. And then a group of 9-year-olds approached me. And they say, hey, we'd like to participate in this program. So right now, I've got 4 national teams that will tour the country, compete in all the Big Perfect Game and other events. It is 100% scholarship. I cover uniforms, I cover travel, I cover entry fees, I cover plane fare, I cover car rental. Probably, and Perfect Game did a video on me. It's on my Instagram. They did a beautiful, like, 11-minute video. I probably contribute over $500,000 a year to that because, look, I friggin' love it. I love watching the kids. I love meeting the families. I break cards with the kids, and I want to give them the training and the opportunity to be their very best. And one of the things I did, I look at some of these programs, and by the way, and I'll get in that second, but I look at some of these programs and they do these things, college festivals, and they charge kids like $200 to come in, and they have like Division II and Division III schools. And, I'm like, something, they're going in, they're hitting for an hour and they're paying a fee, and I don't know what they're getting out of it. I said, I want to give these kids an education. Everybody who's in my program, really, if they're going to go to college for the most part, they're going to need to get scholarships. Okay. Or they're going to go to a local school or whatnot. But if they want to go to a national program, they're going to need to get a baseball scholarship to go to the school. I said, I want to help them get there. So I came up with the idea of having an education day. And look, I used my name, I used my money, I used my connections, and I was able to get LSU, the #1 team in the country. Murray State, I think they were the number 19 in the country last year. Richmond, always in the College World Series. And then 3 of the best local schools, Villanova, which has to be the best athletic school in my area. And then Penn and Princeton all came into my facility and spent 2.5 hours there taking questions from kids, explaining to kids what they look for, telling these kids, do you know that you can be the best player and I may not want to draft you? I may not want you for my school. You have to be a good teammate. You've got to get good grades. You have to be respectful of the game. And we asked questions like, what would turn you off? And they said, difficult parents to deal with will turn us off. Like, they will like not recruit a kid if they don't want to deal with the parents. And then we let all the kids answer questions. And, I know there are a lot of people, tons and tons and tons of programs and people run them, and they're all trying to make money. And they are, they're buying their $20 jerseys and they're charging $100.
Oh, it's so expensive. Travel baseball is so
Yeah,
expensive.
and they're doing this, and then they're charging their fees. And look, I'm sure that they hate me because I'm coming in there and I am looking at this and I am doing it out of enjoyment. I am doing this to give back to the community. I am doing it to really, help the kids and give them an opportunity. And, one of the things I said is, like, Paul started with this team when he's 11. I want this to be the kids and the families that he's with when he's 16 and 17 years old. So that is like literally that is how I spend. If I'm not doing something with my family, and obviously if doing that, I'm doing with my family because I'm doing with Paul. But that is how I spend 100% of time, 100% of my time when I am not doing it. With I'm planning things, I'm talking to the families, I am looking at box scores, I am looking at Florida today, and I saw, and they want to change the name of their local team. They changed it to Goldin, Florida. They said, can we call it Goldin, Florida? I said, sure. So the local team, I'm in there watching Game Changer, watching them in the Game Changer. And I got 5 of my guys that are from Oklahoma, Missouri, and Texas. They're playing in Oklahoma, and I'm sitting there and I'm watching there. And this is how I spend my weekends. I'm a friggin' nut. I know I could be a difficult guy to crack. I know that it's possible. Certainly, I can come off to some people, boys, aloof. as cocky. But what I guarantee you, no matter what you think of me, if you met me and you, whether it was at the National or a different show or came to Golden and you'd spend an hour with me, you know, you might still think I'm an ego, but I think you know, I think you'd understand me a little more and what my true feelings are. And you know, I think the way people live, I think the way people act, I think the way people conduct themselves is you know, and the way people give their time to others with that are like-minded is really the true measure of everything, as opposed to you know what somebody says on a stupid live. And we're like very personal here. I'm going to tell you something else. Like, I'm looking at myself and I'm red right now, and I hope you get 1 million views, because you know this will answer like a lot of questions. Like, sometimes people say, "Oh, Ken's cooked, Ken's drunk." You know, I have rosacea. Okay, so if you don't know what that is, please Google it. So what happens is, if I am excited, if I am rushing, if I've got adrenaline, it all rushes to my face and it red. You know, because I I am a lightweight when I drink. I you know, I have you know, I have bad family history, as evident by my dad. I eat incredibly low saturated fat. I exercise rigorously every day. I've completed over 40 triathlons, 4 marathons, and I drink minimally because it is, you know, it's bad for the cholesterol, and I'm a lightweight. So if you think, oh, Ken's drunk, Ken's this, Ken's that, no, you know, I don't think that none of you have ever seen that. And you know, but I do enjoy my late night lives. I will have to, you know, slow them down a little bit. And again, this is me. I sit there and I can pop up on midnight on, especially during like my kids' vacation. They go to bed like, you know, like during like week of Christmas. You want to see me at 2 in the morning? Go on Instagram. It's you know, on like whenever, like spring break and Christmas break. You'll just see me sitting there busting cards, having an AMA on Instagram. And you know, I think that could be why that community is I have so many followers there, and it's such a strong community, because these guys have seen me for 7 years on Instagram. They saw me when Paul was 6 years old, and he and I went on Instagram Live 150 days in a row and open up boxes, because that was my reward to him when he did his schoolwork, because everybody was trapped in home during COVID. I open up packs late night. I talk shit. I talk sports. I answer questions. I sit there with a red cup, you know, and that would be like the only time I actually have like real alcohol, because I'm in my house. It's 1 in the morning. Everybody's asleep. You know, I don't get drunk. But I am not a drinker. I would, you know, so if you see me red, it is the rosacea. And I get high on what I do for a living. I've said it before, I'll say it again. You know, except for certain days when I stick my foot in the mouth, you know, which is not the first, hopefully the last. But, you know, I love the business. I love collectibles. I love dealing with people in collectibles. Um, Going back to that live, the first thing I said in that live, and the other thing reason I did that live, is I felt the sports people were giving the Pokemon community shit. And what I literally said is, hey, listen, if there's a group of people who find something important to them, if there is a group, that there's a community that values something, and they buy and sell and trade it, just because you don't understand it, just because it's not what you do, you can't say it's not a collectible. And that applies to
Right.
sports cards, that applies to coins, that applies to memorabilia, that applies to Pokemon, that applies to Disney, that applies to everything. And that was like the whole point I was trying to make. I made it at the beginning and I made it at the end. But like, I enjoy this stuff. I enjoy trying to find my next big find. It's all I've done for a living. It's the only way I've ever made money. And as I said, if you love your job, you feel like you never worked a day in your life. And I've told both of my daughters who are working professionally. I said, listen, you can make all the money in the world, but if you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh crap, I do not want to go to work, and you start off with a headache, and you like just say, oh my god, I'm dreading this, you really need to look for a change. I mean, obviously, if you're supporting a family and you got obligations, my advice is find something else first. But I think it is more important to like what you do in life than it is to base it solely on on the salary. And look, I think collecting is a great community. Collecting has been amazing for me. The community has been amazing for me. I love it. I enjoy it. There are some days I'm very aggravated. But you know, I hope to be doing this when I'm in my 80s.
It's a dream job, man. I mean, I know you've probably got some high stress days, no doubt, but
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of people that would like to be in your shoes, just
Mm-hmm.
working in the hobby the way that you are. Well, thanks for coming on, man. I mean, this was kind of the deep dive with Ken Goldin that you might not see. This is another side. It's another side, and especially on YouTube.
90 minutes. Wow, I just keep rambling. Okay, yeah,
No,
good.
man, it was great. I'm glad that I got to hang out with you. Thanks for coming on. Of course, kind of clearing the air on this past
Mhm.
week. And I think, hey, people are human beings, and nobody's perfect, so we move on. But when
Mhm.
is the next big golden auction ending, so we can go pump that before we end?
Sure. Well, we just had at the time of filming, we had the vintage auction and that ended yesterday. Amazing results. We have pop culture auction ending this week, and the Golden 100. That's the big one. The Golden 100 ends in 2 weeks. And again, we have right now, look, I think you go to golden.com. We've got some for everybody, every price point, every taste. We're doing our first ever coin auction in March. We're doing we're going to do a watch auction. We're just trying to make sure we can reach all the pockets of collectors.
Fantastic. All right, man. Well, let's do it again. Have another crazy week so you can come back on for another interview.
I just want to look. I want a calm week. I want to like duck. I want to duck and cover. And I'm going to try to take a week from responding and see how that goes. And again, I guarantee everybody this. Again, if you're at the National, if you're at any of these shows, walk up, say hello, and honestly, you got a gripe, give me the grape to my face. Just come on, just give me the grape to my face. I am not going to shy away. That's just not me. I try not to duck and hide. Sometimes it gets me in trouble, but hopefully in the long run, people can appreciate somebody who's willing to go there, talk about an issue, and um, give whether it's their side or everybody's side, or admit that, hey, I am human and I have done a lot more dumb thing because I'm older than almost everybody's going to be watching this. I've done more dumb things than all of you have done. Hopefully I've done a lot of things right, and hopefully I do a lot fewer dumb things in the future. And the one last thing is, I do realize, and I do take it seriously, that to a lot of people in the industry, because of Netflix, because of the show, because of my social media reach, that I am, if not the first, one of the first points of contact for this amazing industry. And I promise you, I really don't want to look like an asshole. And I am going to do my best to make sure that I don't disappoint any of you.
Good stuff, man. All right, Ken. Until next time, buddy. Have a good night.
Thank you, Dustin. Appreciate it.